My name is Piotr Kramarz. I'm the chief scientist of ECDC, and this session will be about pneumococcal invasive pneumococcal disease and pneumococcal vaccinations. This is actually, if people can hear me, this is the most exciting session at the SCAIDA. So if I was you, I wouldn't stand there outside. I would just come while the seats are still free, because then it will be very crowded. And I would like to welcome also everybody, all the thousands of people who are connecting online. This session is the initiative of the Polish Ministry of Health. We have with us here sitting in the front row, Dr. Joanna Kujawa, the head of unit in the Department of Public Health of the Polish Ministry, and it's her initiative to have this session. And we will focus on the pneumococcal disease, invasive pneumococcal disease. As I said, why are we doing this? It is because ECDC is uniquely positioned to talk about this. On the one hand, we are getting all the surveillance data submitted by the member states on pneumococcal disease. On the other hand, we also collect information on how the immunization systems function. So we have data on the schedules, vaccination schedules, and we will show you this. I don't have to tell you about how important the disease itself is. You will see it in the slides also. It's one of the most burdensome infections that we deal with, both in terms of the incidence, but also mortality and severity of disease. And it impacts the extrema of age, the young children, and also the elderly. And actually, I talked with Dr. Kujawa during the break, and we are a center of disease control, but this disease is actually very difficult to control. You will see it. That was our conclusion. And I think it's a good illustration of what Silvio Funtovic talked about in the keynote speech, of a complex situation. This is a lot of complexity, both in terms of the epidemiology of disease, all the serotypes, and if they are going up or down, and also the vaccination schedules. You will see it. With me, I have Sabrina Bacci, who is the head of section Vaccine Preventable Diseases and Immunization, and also Nathalie Nicolay, who is our principal expert in vaccine preventable diseases. And we will go about let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for joining me. And I'm talking too long already now, so I'll give them the floor in a second. There will be two presentations followed by questions, and you can either ask questions through the app, or you can come to the microphone here. So without much further ado, I would like to give the floor now to Sabrina Bacci.
Thank you, Piotr, and we are really so grateful for this invitation from the Minister of Health. It was an opportunity to bring this important topic on the agenda, and has been a topic for us in vaccination for many years with polysaccharide vaccines that has been on available for a number of years, but which were also not immunogenic in very young children below the age of 2. So today is really an opportunity to see a little bit how the vaccination programs have developed, what is the current status, and really noting that a number of products that are conjugated and are effective in young children are how they are being implemented. And this is a little bit a summary of how the products have been authorized over the years. And it's a lot of information, but really noting that the first product we have was 2001 with a vaccine containing against the 7 serotypes, and then through the timeline, another vaccine containing 10 serotypes, 13 serotypes, and and more recently 20 and 21 serotypes, and 15 also. In addition to the evolution of the products of having more serotypes, what we have seen also is a change in the schedule on how these vaccines were recommended to be used. 3+1 doses, 2+1 doses at different moments in times, and even more recently we will see 1+1 schedule that has been piloted in the European setting by the UK. So it's quite dense and evolving situation from the vaccination perspective. What is also important to note, of course, is that vaccination has been a critical intervention to fight this disease, and that also what we will see is that there is a direct protection that these vaccines are conferring, but also indirect effects, and so important to look after them. Before going to the invasive pneumococcal disease, which is really what we are looking at from the European surveillance perspective, I also wanted to take a moment to frame the fact that there is a bigger part of pneumococcal disease, which is the non-invasive pneumococcal disease in its clinical presentations with otitis, non-bacteriemia pneumonia, sinusitis, which traditionally is not under surveillance, but it's also equally, it's even more frequent, we may say. When we talk about invasive pneumococcal disease, and the data we'll present today, we're looking about disease in which the bacterium is isolated in a sterile fluid, cerebrospinal fluid, pleura, and other sterile sites. And we will see the most critical conditions, meningitis, sepsis, and similar. And mortality can be high. Of course, this is higher in low and middle income countries, with a mortality in the recent data of 7% from the data available at ECDC. And in terms of resistance, we will also see that the non-invasive types are the ones associated with more resistance, but we also see resistance in the invasive type. An overview of the different serotypes included in the vaccines. What has to be noted is that as the number of serotypes included in the vaccine increased over time, they basically piled on each other, except for the latest product, PCV 21, where actually we have new serotypes, but also quite some other serotypes that were previously included in other vaccines that are not contained in this vaccine. At ECDC, we had a very important project. This is about 10 years ago now, but it was really important to frame a number of, how different communicable diseases are really affecting what is their burden in the European context. And actually, as an outcome of this project, in which we used surveillance data, some modeling data, and conversion factors, we were really able to map the fact that actually invasive pneumococcal disease was among the fourth diseases really causing an intense burden for the EU population, with high and also with high individual burden, noting that it can be severe, can be associated to death and other complications. When we look at this other picture here, which is depicting the annual deaths per 100,000 population, you see some big bubbles, and this is on the far right influenza. But then in the middle, also, like, let's say, quite large, we have tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, and invasive pneumococcal again disease. A part of this study also reflected on the fact that the disability-adjusted life years, which was is a composite measure to evaluate burden, was really placing invasive pneumococcal disease as a second cause of burden in elderly individuals, just after influenza, and the fourth cause of burden for the younger population. When we look at the data, this is the latest, latest data. We have some other data, but I'm not showing that today. On the clinical presentation on fatal cases, we see some differences in age groups, with the younger individuals with most often dying of meningitis, the older individuals equally fatal cases equally distributed between bacterionic pneumonia and septicemia. How this started? When this product came to the market, actually CDC wasn't even an institution at the time, but actually work was being conducted to implement for having surveillance of meningococcal disease and Haemophilus influenzae. And as part of this discussion, and when these activities were transferred over to CDC, which were since they were being coordinated outside the CDC at the time, pneumococcal disease was identified as a priority. And the CDC started to map the system to understand how this disease could have been surveilled. And then became the surveillance became slightly more, let's say, richer at European level. I also remember this time because I was in Italy myself when this product came to the market, and it was at the time, similar time when the HPV was getting, how can we say, popularity in terms of vaccination. And actually we were finding ourselves, I mean, the scientific community with some vaccines for which we didn't have traditional surveillance system. So this is something, yeah, I think it was anyway, very powerful moment. Now we have so many vaccines coming to the market that maybe we are, yeah, and the surveillance system are also different. Going a little bit back in time, this is a depiction of the vaccination schedules of children 10 years ago and today. You have different lines representing different countries, and the green blocks represent the time when the doses are given. And if you look, you know, from the visual perspective, actually they look quite similar if we compare them. What we don't see here is that actually the products used in the countries changed over time, and also that maybe more than one product could have been used in the different countries. At the time of 2014, we had 25 countries with a children program. If you look at the adults, and Nathalie will go more in detail on this, actually the situation has evolved quite much, with 16 countries having a recommendation in light green here, that the recommendation that was based on age, and in dark green, a recommendation based on risk conditions. The situation in 2014 very much different from the situation we see today, with 28 countries with a general program, and I think 27 with a program on risk conditions. So the situation has been very rapidly evolving. Among the efforts that ECDC put in place, this was this started in 2012, was really try to bring surveillance to the next level, to allow surveillance data to have a high proportion of completeness, and use this data to generate evidence on effectiveness of the programs and impact of the programs. And this project went on for 6 years, and a number of countries were included. Some of the main findings of these programs were that incidence of pneumococcal disease declined during the initial period of observation, but then actually then later it was the impact of the vaccination weakened. Another element that this project was able to map was the high vaccine effectiveness of the pneumococcal vaccines, vaccine effectiveness against the serotypes included in the vaccines. The project also was able to describe the effect of in adults, and at the time I think it was one of the first projects describing this worldwide, noting, as you see here from the graph, and if you look at the middle of the graph, PCV 7 and PCV 13 on 7, you have a decreasing trend over the years that are displayed. So this is the incidence rate ratio of those serotypes that went down over the observation period. And I have to say, when this data was described in the adults, basically the majority of countries had some sort of recommendation for the risk-based conditions, and very few had recommendation but with a polysaccharide vaccine. So quite much indicating that we see an effect in also probably in individuals not really targeted by the vaccination programs. All this data, together with other data from other networks worldwide, contributed to the Serenade project, which was a global initiative looking at similar questions to the ones I have just explained, really to also understand the global situation in relation to this disease. Globally, this vaccine actually has been implemented in a number of countries, although, I mean, I think it's about 60%. So noting that, of course, the burden is very high in children in low and middle income countries. The key findings of this analysis, there was many different sub-analyses of this data pulled together. Similar results to the ones I've just explained for the SpeedNet project, and noting actually that the majority of the data that was pulled came from high income countries, and a lot from Europe. This project, the Serenade project, was used to feed the WHO position paper on pneumococcal vaccines, where there are some indications on the schedules to be used, the schedules that indicating that the 2+1 schedule can be used at the same time at the, I mean, there are no superiority of the two approaches, 2+1 or 3+0, and also alternative schedules could be used. And this is something we're coming back on this. Of course, there are considerations, and this is really valid on the fact that there are other vaccines available, but local conditions are essential in also understanding if these vaccines are relevant for specific contexts, and situations like price, the fact that more serotypes you include, less maybe immunogenicity you can have against some serotypes are to be noted, and that also different schedules can fit in different situations programmatically in a different way. And of course, a reminder on the importance of surveillance. A concept note from WHO was also developed. It's not a position paper, but it's a consideration on the use of adult vaccination in individuals above age of 70, noting that basically vaccination is an option for this group, and we have seen that this is the situation for the majority of EU countries that have taken this decision. Of course, you know, these positions, they apply globally, so it's their assessment for global level. A study that we've been looking at, interesting at, is a study from UK that was published, I think, 1 year ago on the Lancet. The UK moved to a 1+1 schedule, and of course, decided on the need to assess this change, which was particularly challenging because the change started during the pandemic. This paper actually concludes that the move to less doses. So far, it's positive. I mean, we don't see any increased effect, increased circulation. And I think what is interesting from this paper is that really it's a combination of very different data sources, some genomic information, modeling, strong surveillance data, laboratory data, but also complemented with clinical information. Again, really going back to the complexity that Piotr was mentioning of really assessing this disease. A last note on antimicrobial resistance, some data that we collect both from the surveillance of pneumococcal disease, but also in the let's say the collections that we do specifically for antimicrobials. And I think what I want to highlight here is that we do see some resistance, and particularly I want to highlight the macrolide resistance that has been increasing over time since 2019. And for this resistance, we see higher resistance in Southern and Eastern Europe. WHO has also had a position on this topic and included pneumococcal, invasive pneumococcal streptococcal pneumonia as a bacterial priority, is a pathogen which has priority in terms of antimicrobial resistance and with a medium, let's say, a medium level. And this is for the ones that are resistant to macrolides. And also a part of the ECDC data collected has fed these efforts, these conclusions, let's say. Some considerations on our ECDC position from the EU perspective, where we continue to believe that it's really important to have an integrated AP and lab surveillance to monitor the effectiveness of the vaccination program in all its different elements. The fact that, of course, we also have to, we are looking at many countries together, so there are differences in, there could be differences in understatement, and the fact that we really need high completeness of data to respond to these questions. Another challenge that we see, and maybe we can expand on that, is also that we need also to understand which vaccine is given by the different individuals, and this is really something that, you know, when you have more products, you know, unless you have a robust registry, it will be difficult to record. And then at the other point is, of course, about the importance of working with our laboratory experts, our networks, to increase capacity, of course, to have a strong surveillance. And just to conclude, basically summarizing that what we have seen in the EU, countries have been moving to higher valent vaccines. Nathalie will go more in detail. We have seen we see an example from the UK shifting to a later schedule, which gives maybe more opportunities for other vaccines like meningococcal vaccine, and also that from our perspective, again, is really what we need. We need a high vaccination coverage, a robust system that can describe the evolving nature of IPD. And that the recommendations should always take into account the local situation and really have the opportunity to adapt this local situation. I don't know, all my colleagues, especially Piotr, who has really supported in this preparation of this presentation, the national focal points, the operational contact points for invasive pneumococcal disease, the NIDA collaboration members, and the SpeedNet project contact points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. We'll follow now with the talk by Nathalie and Nicolay, and then we'll have some time, hopefully, for questions. Nathalie, please.
Thanks, Piotr. Thanks to the Ministry of Health for the invitation. So I'm going to give you an overview of the vaccination program against pneumococcal disease in Europe, and as well as, and I will complement the presentation with an overview of the epidemiology of the disease at global level. Just to quickly get back to this slide, so as Sabrina mentioned, there has been a quick evolution in the development of the product with more vaccine, with higher valency available. And actually, the vaccination program adapted as well very quickly to this new market, I would say. And I'm going to reflect on that in the next slides. So if we look at the vaccination program in children, there is a program in place and founded in all the EU countries today. It's not a question, with the exception of Estonia. Some countries have a mandatory policy, 7 of them. And then in terms of product recommended, we have countries that have the PCV 10, and actually all the products are currently recommended depending on the countries. Some countries may even have not really, maybe a recommendation, but at least, but also availability of different products that can be administered to the kids. And in terms of vaccination schedule, it's mainly and almost exclusively a 2+1 schedule, with the exception of a country that may have moved to a PCV 20 use that require actually 3+1 dose schedule. Although some of them are doing a 2+1 dose off label. If I move next. Yes. Okay, so this slide give you an overview of the product recommended, with the green part highlighting those who have single product, let's say, recommended, and the more colorful country where you can find actually different PCV product. In terms of, oops, maybe I'm using. Yes, in terms of coverage, so we have 16 countries that reported in 24 coverage above 90%. And then we have a country that have a lower level of coverage. Actually, the range is between 56% for the country with the lowest coverage to 99% in high-performing countries. If we look at the schedules and the program in the adults, there is 2 types of program. One program targeting the young adults, let's say, with underlying condition. And in this case, there is a recommendation in place in all countries that is funded in about half of them, fully funded. And then we have in place different reimbursement scheme or no funding at all. And in terms of vaccination product recommended, there is quite a patchwork of different program in place, mainly based on the polysaccharide vaccine, with, in addition, complemented by a PCV vaccines. This is the picture, the dominant picture we have for the moment, at least. PCV 20 has come up recently, and more countries actually have implemented it over the past 18 months. These maps again reflect on the diversity of the different products recommended. And the blue reflect on the country that have a combination schedule in place with PPV 23 and PCV, and any PCV product. It can vary. Just to reflect on the different and the variety of risk conditions that are covered by the different recommendations in place, and also to reflect on an important topic is actually the lack of data when it comes to the deployment of the program. At ECDC, we've collected a few months ago we've asked the country to report data on the adults program, and you can see here that we only got the data from 2 countries, and that showed actually a low level of deployment. The second program in place in the adult is age-based, so in older individual, with the lower age limit that actually vary between 50 and 75 years old for the lower age limit, funded in a minority of countries, fully funded, and with different product recommended, but with PCV20 actually that is now recommended in 11 countries. The rest still have the combination with PPV 23. And in terms of so yes, the map again, but I will move quickly on the deployment of the program and different different level of deployment when the data, where the data are actually available, because we only got the data from about 10 countries. So just a few words of conclusion. So what we can say is that there is a poor deployment of the program outside the pediatric population, as reflected by the coverage data, but also by the fact that this program may not be funded in the adults. We have different, really a lot of variation in the schedules and in the product recommended, so that affect actually the interpretation of the surveillance data. And it's a rapidly evolving topic with a new product and in clinical trial at the moment. So we can expect even more changes in the coming years. Now, if we look at the main feature, epidemiological feature of IPD, invasive pneumococcal disease, and I'm going to present you the data we are collecting at ECDC through our reporting system, the EpiPulse cases. These data are coming from 29 reporting countries. We are missing only one in this system, and 23 of these countries have a comprehensive system in place with mandatory reporting. So it's quite good. We need to note that there is a low completeness of certain variable reporting, like an important one, which is the outcome and the clinical presentation, and I will come back to that. In terms of incidence, so we have a geographical disparity, really, with country of reporting low incidence in the southern eastern part of Europe, and country with very high incidence in the just to note, for example, in the Scandinavian, in the Nordic countries, as well as in Spain. If we look at the burden of the disease by age group, as Sabrina mentioned, but of course, we know that the very young children, less than 5 years old and less than 1 year old, as well as the older individual, are paying the highest burden. And if you look at the incidence rate in 23, you can clearly see that, for example, the incidence in the elderly so bounce back to the pre-pandemic level, but even reach a higher level than we could have expected. So it's a serious one. Now I will try to navigate clearly with the serotype distribution, and I wanted to flag a few serotypes of importance in the coming slides. So you have serotype 3 that is covered now since PCV13 is in place, but for which we know that there is a low immunogenicity of the PCV vaccine. Serotype 19A, same as the serotype 3 covered in PCV13 and higher valency vaccine. 22F, serotype A. So those are respectively covered by PCV 15 and then PCV 20, serotype 10A and serotype 24F. You don't have to recall if they were covered by the different PCV vaccine, but they are highly prevalent serotypes actually in the EU-EA. So if we look at the global distribution of the serotypes, we clearly see that serotype 3A and 19 accounted for more than 50% of the serotypes notified, with a clear increasing trend in serotype 3 and 19A. So those that are covered by PCV 13 actually, and the declining trend in serotype A. For the rest of the serotypes, including 22F, it's quite a steady prevalence reported. Then, if we look at the distribution of the serotypes by age group, serotypes 19A and 3 remain highly prevalent in children, with an increasing trend actually in the 1-4-year-old for serotypes 19A and 3. And this is reflected as well in the histogram with the blue chart reflecting the PCV 13 serotypes. So you can clearly see the increasing proportion there. For the most common, for the other most common serotypes reported, there is a slight differences in the distribution by age group, and in the less than 1 year old, serotype A has been highly prevalent, especially after the pandemic, but tend to decrease. You've mapped it in this histogram. In the other age group, I would say that the prevalence of the reported serotypes there is quite steady, and we have 24F that accounted for quite a high proportion of serotypes as well in 1-4 years old. Looking at the distribution of the serotypes now by clinical outcome, when we look at sepsis, and we are looking at few cases, about 1,000, so serotypes 19A and 3 are again highly prevalent with an increasing trend reported, and the same on the histogram, you can clearly see this trend again. I think it's the key message to have on this. When we look at meningitis, and it's even fewer cases reporting, we need to recall that the distribution of the serotypes is actually very heterogeneous. However, the serotypes that have been described in the literature with severe outcome of IPDs, including meningitis, are part of this distribution. And I am thinking of serotype A, 10, 15B, 33 F. So those are not unexpected, let's say, serotypes. And the variety of serotypes is also reflected on the histogram, actually. Sorry. Now, looking at the elderly, so the distribution of the serotypes is really reflect on the overall distribution I show you in the first slide, because this age group accounted for most of the cases reported. We are looking now at 22,000 cases reported in that age group. So serotype 3, serotype 19A, serotype 8, are those that are highly prevalent in that age group. And on top of these three, you have also serotypes 22F. It's a lot of figures. Looking at the distribution by outcome, when we look at sepsis, so the serotypes is fairly the same as the global distribution, so I won't expand on this. Just one word that actually the most prevalent serotypes are slightly different when we look at the severe outcome compared to those that are reported in children. Same for meningitis. So we have the highly pathogenic serotypes reported here, but we need also to spot that serotype 3 is quite prevalent in meningitis. It was not the case in children. And when we look at the death outcome, I think the only message here is the high prevalence of serotypes 3. 30% of cases who died had the serotypes 3's pneumococcal serotypes 3. Sorry. So final remark, of course, the epidemiology that we observe at EU level doesn't mean that it's the same when we look at the data, the national data. So the burden of serotypes 3 and 19A that are all serotypes that have been covered by the vaccines for the past decades remain high. And as I mentioned, we know that the immunogenicity of the vaccine against serotypes 3 is not so good, and that the burden of serotypes 19A has increased with the implementation of the PCV10 vaccines. Serotype A has been reported as an increasing serotypes after the pandemic. There are few papers on this, but tend to decline in our data. The landscape is quite heterogeneous, and it's difficult also to interpret the distribution of the serotypes because we don't have data on non-invasive pneumococcal disease, and we know that all of this is closely linked. We also don't have data on carriage. And just to rephrase what Sabrina said about the adaptation of the policy at national level, that should really look at the data locally. And that's it for me, I think.
The
vaccine.
Next one. We have that acknowledgement.
Oh, yes, yeah. Of course, yes. And I would like to acknowledge all my colleagues, but also the NITAG collaboration that provided few figures here, the national focal point and the operational contact point. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nathalie and Sabrina. I would like to open the floor for questions. I saw people taking pictures of what colleagues presented. A lot of this data actually on our website. If you are looking for vaccination schedules, you can type, I think in some internet browsers, ECDC vaccine scheduler, yeah. And you will see the panel where you can compare country to country or see an overview across countries. So please take a look. And if you found, I saw some people shaking their heads, if you find some discrepancies, this is a very dynamic field. We try to keep our data up to date, but if there are some news, please talk to us during the break and tell us what changed. We have one question online from Marioli Veloso Freicola. Given the increasing number of pneumococcal vaccine products available, how does ECDC envision the future of immunization schedules across Europe? Do you anticipate greater harmonization or more diversification among member states? You know, prediction is, somebody said prediction is difficult, especially prediction of the future. So I don't want to try to prophesy what will happen. On the one hand, we have a lot of collaboration going across the member states. For example, in the NITAG collaboration platform, Nathalie thanked the NITAGs with whom we collaborate, the National Immunization Technical Advisory Groups, and we have a platform for them where they meet. We had a meeting recently, a few days ago, actually, and there is a lot of exchange of experiences, looking together at evidence. So I think, you know, they look at each other, what are the strengths and weaknesses of different schedules, and probably there is some harmonization going on because people are learning from each other. On the other hand, we have new products coming to the market which changed the situation, so it's very difficult to predict at the moment. And of course, ECDC it's not our aim to harmonize schedules because there are so many factors playing a role there at the member state level. Anything to add on that?
Maybe just to add in, overall, of course, there is the issue of the product, but overall, for sure, I think we can say that we wish the vaccination, the childhood vaccination programs to continue to be successful and to protect the children. So, I mean, then you can maybe choose different products according to the context, but from our perspective, this is something that should be further invested on. And for the adults, I think we see the same, that the programs can be protective. From that perspective, I think the data we have today show us that you know, we need to further implement the programs better. But yeah, this is also a population that we like to protect.
Thank you very much. We have another question.
We have also.
We have some questions from the floor. Please go ahead, and then I switch again to the iPad.
Thank you, Margrethe Grevistel from Norway. Thank you for the presentations. I was wondering if you have the vaccination status of the children that you presented the data for, because I think it's really important to know if it's vaccine failure or if it's circulation of variants in the population where, for example, 19A isn't used in the vaccine.
Yes, thanks for your question. No, we have data on the vaccination status that should be reported to our system, but these data, unfortunately, are very incomplete, and also are, and we are working in order to improve that, are very difficult to report because the vaccination schedule in kids, basically it's 3 doses to have the full primary course plus first booster. So it's difficult to interpret the data based on the information that is reported on the cases. Yeah.
Is it on? No. I just want to add that there is, there's a definition of how to report vaccine failure. So it is, if everyone uses the same definition, it should be possible, either if it's before the 3rd dose or after the 2nd dose and so forth.
We can work on that.
Want to take?
No, I think we can work on that and see. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question from the floor here on the left-hand side.
Georgina Zanakakis from Greece, and thank you for both the speakers for such a nice and very interesting presentations. Now the issue is serotype 3, and what I've seen in the second presentation was that, we had the data from 2019 to 2023. We saw a rise on serotype 3. That's what I've seen from my data from Greece. And I'm just wondering if you have any explanation initially on this increase of serotype 3.
Yeah. So what we know for serotype 3 is that the immunogenicity of the vaccine and all the product, even the most recent one, is not so good, is lower than the other. And I think the resurgence we see post, so in 23 and in 22 also reflect what we are seeing for the other disease and the dynamic post-COVID. But it's true that this one is is highly prevalent and is probably the one who has researched yes, the steepest way, I would say. We haven't done any trend analysis, but I think it would be important that we look a bit at the dynamic before, during, and after the pandemic to see, to better document also the resurgence of this one. But there is clearly a lack of effectiveness of the product against that serotypes that is causing actually a huge burden in the elderly. So yes, there is ongoing transmission and also a lack of protection.
Well, another question is that we all observed that in 2019, many of the European countries, they went from the vaccination schedule 3-to-1 to 2-to-1. So that might be causing an impact on serotype 3. That's what I see from my data. So I think this is an issue to be discussed, apart from the low immunogenicity that serotype 3 already has, Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Thank you for the comments and sharing the experiences from your country with us. We have a question now on this side, and then I move to the iPad for the online comments.
Miriam Knol from the Netherlands. So I was part of the SPITNet project, where we really nicely could evaluate the different vaccines that were given in the EU. And now that we have the new vaccines and all the different schedules in the EU, I was wondering whether ECDC is planning to follow up on SPITNet and has a new initiative to combine data from different countries.
Resources, yeah.
Sabrina?
Yeah, so basically, indeed, the project lasted a few years and then basically ended and actually coincided with the pandemic. So on that sense, those pandemic years, there wasn't any increased analysis that we performed or that we performed in collaboration with the countries. Now, I mean, the topic of the effectiveness, the impact of the programs is very actual. Since that time, then when SPITNet was implemented, ECDC has changed the mandate and has a special chapter actually on the vaccine effectiveness studies. And we have a formal mechanism, let's say, to look at priority questions. And actually, we will have a meeting next month also together with some members, the member states invited, and also some experts from the regulatory side to really look at the different questions. So we will see what is the interest, but we think that the priority question for pneumococcal disease will remain. So this is an area where we plan to continue to be active. And the umbrella of these different projects have been called, let's say, vaccine monitoring platform activities. And those years during the pandemic and more recently have really focused on the respiratory diseases. But the reality is that there are other questions, and maybe now really it's the time to look at them. And pneumococcal is one of them, given also the high burden and all the questions, and also as Nathalie was reflecting the fact that we need the solid data also to assess what is happening. I don't know if Piotr, you're also chairing this collaboration. I don't know if you want to add on.
So to add, indeed, as Sabrina said, we are fortunate now to have this vaccine monitoring platform with the European Medicines Agency. And one of the first things we did was to develop the joint research agenda. And you can see it on our website, also an EMA website. And you can see that pneumococcal vaccine effectiveness is high there in terms of priority. But then we have to, of course, take a lot of other factors into account in the overall prioritization. But this is very high on the priority agenda for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We still have a few minutes, and I have a question from the chat. is pneumococcal serotype replacement observed regardless of the type of the PCV vaccine used? And what impact does serotype replacement have on the effects of vaccination programs in children, especially under 5 years of age? You want to comment, Sabrina or Nathalie?
Yeah. Serotypes replacement is, has been well described since the first PCV vaccine have been were recommended. I think one of the difficulties we have today, and although our data covered until the 2019, is that the program are switching so quickly from one product to another one that you cannot really have a good assessment, and I imagine as well at country level about the effectiveness of the product, because you already have a new product in place. But the serotypes, so the PCV 15 has been, and now I don't remember, but are quite recent. And there are very few data on the effectiveness of this vaccine. So although we could expect that there will be also a phenomenon of serotypes replacement, it's not so well described compared to PCV10 and PCV13. And PCV20 is really new since for the past year, so we need to monitor that as well.
Thank you very much. And we also have from the chat a question about genomic surveillance. It's a little provocative. Why do we do genomic surveillance for pneumococci? There are no real large transmission chains in the pneumococci, so the sequencing money would be better used in pneumococcal surveillance, for example. Do you have any comments why we do this, not just serotype, but also genotyping in general, and molecular surveillance?
At the moment, ECDC doesn't perform per se any project on the streptococcal, and this is something that if we should embark, we will discuss with the countries. At the moment, in terms of the genotyping, we have prioritized genotyping for meningococcal disease. At the same time, I think, it's not really my area, but some of the paper from UK that I showed, I think it was providing additional layers, let's say, to the interpretation of the data. I think it's clear that all these efforts are very resource intensive at local, country level. So it's really about deciding where you put your efforts, and maybe you put your efforts only in some selected parts or sampling. It's really something that we have to do in collaboration with the countries to really make sense out of it.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 2 minutes left, so maybe I'll try to summarize. There are more questions in the chat, but I would like to ask Sabrina and Nathalie to have a look and maybe respond in writing after the session. It's very difficult to summarize. I think when you have such a complicated situation, so many serotypes and vaccines, multivalent, I would really need some artificial intelligence, I think, to make some summary of this session. But I wanted to say one thing. The discussions are often dominated by products. Is one product better than the other? Our perspective, and probably the perspective of most of you in this room, is that of public health, where really we think about the coverage, for example, which is quite suboptimal. We have vaccines of excellent effectiveness, as you saw from the presentations, but the coverage, especially in the older adults population, is quite low. So I think this is our point of view here, that there is a lot to improve in terms of in general raising the coverage, because the burden is very high. You saw it also from the slides, and there are these additional aspects like there is an intersection of the 2 biggest priorities of ECDC, the vaccine preventable diseases and antimicrobial resistance, and there is some role, there are many question marks there, but there is some role of pneumococcal vaccines in fighting against resistance there. With that, I would like to thank very much Sabrina and Nathalie and the Polish Ministry of Health, Joanna, and everybody here for the very interesting discussion and a session. Thank you.